choose life, choose a job, choose the greatest soundtrack of all time. Of course, today we're talking about Trainspotting, the soundtrack. Dude, I'm so excited about this. I'm sure you know because I've been texting you about it nonstop. If you had told me, like, when we started doing self-titled, if you were like, man, really the only reason we're doing this is so someday we can talk about the Trainspotting soundtrack, I'd be like, it's well worth the hundreds of hours that we put in to get to that episode. This is Christmas morning for me. This is my Super Bowl. I'm so ready to go.
Dude, I was excited. Now I am amped after that. Dude, let's go. I mean, I remember you showing me this film for the first time and us like carrying it in our car so that like a Gideon's Bible, like in case we need to share the gospel with somebody today, we do you have a VCR? Let's sit still and watch this. And people just looking at us like, are you guys, why do you think I want to watch a guy climb into a toilet covered in diarrhea?
Man, it's so funny too because I mean, now I've watched this movie so many times and we can easily throw on like closed captioning now. But I can only imagine for the first several years of watching this movie, like I don't know what they're saying. You know, when Begbie starts doing his thing or Spud's going off, like I can only imagine. I was just piecing together. The thing is, you don't almost don't need to know the exact wording when Begbie's talking because it's like I kind of got it. You know, he's throwing the glass over the shoulder, he's whipping the knife out. It's like I think context kind of tells me everything. But man, I'm so excited about this. Of course, the Trainspotting soundtrack. I mean, we were probably listening to this thing after it came out. This was released in February of 1996 in the UK. I don't, just how the world worked then. Definitely, we didn't get a notification that this thing was out and that we needed to watch it. It was probably more 97 when we got into it. But for countless listeners, especially in the US, this soundtrack, this introduced legends like Lou Reed and Iggy Pop and Brian Eno. It introduced new wave through New Order, 90s British bands like Blur, Elastica, and Pulp and Sleeper, and then electronic artists like Underworld and Left Field. I mean, I can't think of a soundtrack that is as varied yet somehow cohesive, or one that had such a it's this profound influence on the taste of young people like us. And like any compilation soundtrack, this is like a mixtape, right? This is like a playlist that was made down. It was like being handed a syllabus of the coolest music imaginable by an older sibling. And I guess in this case, like that sibling is Danny Boyle. Anyway, welcome to the show. This is self-titled. I'm Seth Sparks. I'm joined by my friend Josh Best up in God's country, South Central Kentucky. Man, for me, this thing was a revelation. Like you said, we were proselytizers of Trainspotting. Didn't get it all on my first pass. I don't think I can tell you I got this through BMG. This was like one of 6 CDs that was sent to me in one of those BMG packs. A lot of people were doing Columbia House. I'm like, now I'm a BMG guy.
Experience the freedom of BMG Music Service.
You mentioned earlier about Begbie, how he spoke.
Giving a boy here to turn into a lifetime.
I think as Americans, especially maybe us living in a part of the country where we have an accent and we get kind of poked fun at our accent, we're mesmerized by accents. And so, to have a movie where it's like, wow, these people are speaking English, but I can't understand a word they're saying is like kind of fascinating. What I would say, I wanted to mention what you said earlier about a college course. If the Trainspotting soundtrack was a 300s level college course in music that was given to me by Danny Boyle, unfortunately, I was a flunky and didn't pay attention and just like thought, okay, well, I kind of like this, but I don't need this. And unfortunately, a lot of this music fell on a deaf ear for me as a 16 or 17-year-old. But now, as I revisit it 30 years later, I'm like, my goodness. I mean, there's not one song where I'm like, okay, well, that's just ridiculous. Every song, I mean, you've already mentioned how many styles and genres are represented on the soundtrack. And I don't, now when I revisit it, I don't see one thing out of place or
Yeah.
silly or ridiculous. Everything is very well done, albeit maybe from a total different side of the planet than another song.
Absolutely. When I think about this in the context of other soundtracks that I love and that we listen to, you know, Pulp Fiction was a really formative soundtrack for me. It introduced a lot of people to sort of surf rock stuff like Dick Dale. It even had like Chuck Berry on there, but then it would have like Kool and the Gang. It was a really cool soundtrack. A lot of people will give High Fidelity a lot of love. I think that's a really solid soundtrack as well. But I, I mean, there are amazing ones out there. I think I would make the argument that this is the greatest of all time. And a lot of what you're talking about, it just speaks to it because, on Pulp Fiction, it's like I said, like you're pulling in some Chuck Berry, but you've got other types of music that fit the vibe of the movie. You have, it's like just kind of pulling from disparate areas. And this is, even though it is pulling from a lot of different decades and different styles of music, you're right. It's cohesive. It really fits together really well. One of my arguments too about why this is the most important soundtrack, especially for just so many people, is the cultural impact. The fact that so many people were introduced to such important and really underrepresented music at this point. I think now people, through the internet and everything else, we're way more educated on music that came out that was more post-punk or new wave stuff. But at the time, I mean, that stuff was neglected to some extent in like the history of popular music. This soundtrack is so good that it has a sequel. There's a volume 2 of the Trainspotting soundtrack.
What do you think? Because I remember being a teenager when we first started hanging out in high school, and we're spending a lot of time together and listening to each other's music collection. I remember you having the Pulp Fiction soundtrack and the Trainspotting soundtrack, and I don't think I had ever bought a soundtrack, maybe, or really been like, "Ooh, that's like a must-have." I remember the Forrest Gump soundtrack coming out and just being like, "Wow, that's just like a jukebox of classic rock." Um, but I never had a soundtrack. What do you think it was about motion picture soundtracks that appealed to you and made you want to own those and check them out?
I bought the Pulp Fiction soundtrack before I even saw the movie because the cover looked so cool, and I was like, "Whatever's in this is going to sound great." Because look at it, look, look at the cover. It was just essentially the movie poster, and I remember getting that, and then it was like this portal of songs that I would never have listened to otherwise. It's like I never would have found this, and I started to realize that, like, oh, via a soundtrack, now I can kind of like get a toehold into something else that's like another world. So you kind of, and if it's really well curated, like the Trainspotting soundtrack, you kind of have like all these little doors that you can follow. I don't know if I was that conscious or would have been that articulate about it at the time, but that certainly was the thing that was pulling me. And Trainspotting is like the perfect example of that. And in a way, you were talking about not getting everything, not kind of being a flunky in that 300 level course. I didn't start off loving everything on the soundtrack. It was like, oh, I love these, skip this, love these, skip this. And it was just this thing that like I grew into, like a big suit or something that was just way too big for me at the time. But as I got older and my taste kind of, I got a little bit more adventurous and a little bit more willing to try things. Like I would like grow into like, oh, New Order. Okay. I can kind of feel that over here. And it's like, oh, you want some house music? Okay. Here's some left field for you. Here's some Underworld.
What age do you think you grew into Heaven 17?
Dude, I was like in my late 20s before I got to Heaven 17. I even watching Trainspotting when that's dropping, I'm like, okay, I don't know what this is supposed to be. Are they making fun of this? And it's like, no, actually, I don't think they're making fun of this. I think they love this. And then, after you get into it, then you start hearing like our dude James Murphy being like, Heaven 17 is where it's at. You're like, okay, all right, validated. So this is because, you just start being like, boy, that's cheesy. I don't know about that. And Give me all the Heaven 17 you got right now, baby.
I was gonna talk more about that when we talk about their Temptation track, but I think it's all about when you grew up, what age you were when that was coming around. But for us, we're toddlers or newborns in 1982, and then when 1991 comes around and grunge, we're at the perfect age where it's just like, okay, now we're talking. And I just remember thinking all the 80s synthesizers stuff was just so cheesy, and it was like, I want to get as far away from this as possible. And then now I go back and listen to Temptation by Heaven 17. I'm like, this is amazing. It's like
It's a
ear
banger.
crack. It's like,
Yeah.
wow, look at all this stuff. Ooh, and there's some of this over here.
100%. And the funny thing about this, I think, and that I obviously wouldn't have thought about this until much later after having watched this movie for a long time, is like the movie itself is pretty vague on like when this is taking place. And I listened to the director's commentary, which actually is like, it's not just director's commentary. There's John Hodge. There's like a lot of people involved in the film in that. And they talk about how like they didn't want to put a timestamp on it necessarily, but I swear I couldn't find it for this while prepping for this, but I swear I've heard Danny Boyle talk about kind of copping to the fact that like, look, if these, let's say that just because of like, if anything, the closest thing to a timestamp is probably during the London sequence where Renton goes to London after he's cleaned up and he goes to like a rave essentially. And that's the closest thing to a timestamp. But I say all that to say that like these characters in this film, if they're maybe in their late teens, early 20s, whatever age they are in this film, they have tastes that are way more eclectic that your early 20 something Scottish dude would probably be listening to. Like, I don't know if they would be as geeky about Bowie and Iggy Pop and Lou Reed as they are. I love that about this. I don't see that as a bug. I see it as a feature because I think this soundtrack is really representative of the filmmaker's tastes and Irvin Welsh and the writer of the novel. I think that like a lot of that music is baked into this. It's like he writes about Iggy Pop, he writes about Lou Reed. The novel's a little bit set a little bit earlier than I think the movie would be set in. The fact that these characters in this movie are hanging on to Iggy Pop and David Bowie, and they're talking about all these guys. They're kind of living in the past in a way. And that's kind of the theme, a big theme of this movie, which is like, and that's kind of Diane played by Kelly MacDonald. That's kind of her point in the movie. You know, she has that sequence where she's talking to Renton about how like the world's changing, music's changing, drugs are changing. You can't sit around talking about Ziggy Pop. And he's like, it's Iggy Pop. You know, it's like, it reflects that the world's starting to kind of pass them by a little bit because they're in this stasis. And that's a huge part, a theme of the movie. So it's another way that works well, not only as like introducing people to cool music, but as a theme of the film. I got over the years, man, I've been so nerdy about this. I have read the books that Irving Welsh wrote about these characters. And obviously this film was inspired by the 1993 book Trainspotting. Irvin Welsh, who appears in the film as the dubious drug dealer Mikey Forrester in a great couple of sequences. The book is absolutely incredible. It's when you first start reading it, if you ever pick it up, it's written in Scottish dialect of the different characters. So it's written how each character speaks. And then when you first start reading it, it's like, I don't think I can read a page of this and understand it. And by the end, you can practically speak in all sorts of different Scottish dialects with all the different inflections of the characters. There have been several sequels to the book. The book Trainspotting was first a play where Ewan Bremner played Renton on stage before he played Spud in the film. And novelist Irvin Welsh told Vice that he came into his own in the making of the film by helping the filmmakers on the soundtrack. He personally knew a lot of the musicians, so he was able to facilitate communication and help them avoid paying some of the hefty fees that come with getting the music cleared for use. This was not a huge budget movie at this point. You know, Danny Boyle had done Shallow Grave, which I know we both love. We've talked about that movie, not on the podcast, but just between us. It's really good. But it gets expensive to use a lot of music in film, and that can quickly eat up a budget. It's why a lot of, you mentioned Forrest Gump, like Robert Zemeckis had bank. He had a lot of money to make that movie. So he could go through and pick all of these really classic songs and be completely comfortable paying the rights to that. This film had to be a little bit more clever, but Irving Welsh helped facilitate a lot of that. And he also said that the artists that loved the movie so much, in many cases, they would lobby their own record companies to help secure the songs for little to no cost. And had that not been the case, I mean, they wouldn't have had the budget to use all of those songs. And he said that Danny Boyle knew left field, and because in Shallow Grave, there are like two left field songs. And Danny Boyle's also from Manchester. So there's Irvin Welsh said possibly New Order. It was just an acquaintance of Danny Boyle since they were both from Manchester. And another interesting insight from Irving Welsh regarding the soundtrack is how many of the classic artists like Iggy Pop and Lou Reed are referenced in the book. So those artists were baked into the process, but he didn't understand the whole Britpop angle. And that seems to be much more of a Danny Boyle contribution to the soundtrack. He said that although he knew Primal Scream, he knew Damon Albarn, and he knew Jarvis Cocker, the more current music, current at that time, didn't initially make as much sense to him. So Boyle really helped engineer the inclusion of more contemporary music, which I think is like such a key component of making this soundtrack so vibrant. So Welsh was, he said that including that modern music helped position Trainspotting as the last movie of the British youth culture by utilizing the last strand of what was then most closely associated with that culture, which was, as we call it, Britpop. Danny Boyle said that he personally picked the songs that are used in his films. He said that's true for every film that he makes. And I'm sure so many of our favorite directors do the exact same thing. They're probably nerds and obsessives about it. And he called it one of the deepest pleasures of filmmaking is selecting the soundtrack and curating all that stuff. So he's a nerd. It's so clear watching these movies, especially Trainspotting, that this guy just lives for this thing, because this is a playlist, man. Like so many great soundtracks are playlists. This is curated by somebody really well versed in music, and we're going to get into it track by track. Before we do that, before we dive in, any other thoughts about the overall landscape or anything? Like, I'm guessing that for us, we didn't know all this stuff. We were just like, cool movie, cool soundtrack, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I understood at the time how important this would be. I thought it was just kind of a unique, um, crazy thing that we stumbled on, and we were like, "Oh man, this is so cool!" And we get in our little bubble in rural Southern America, wherever you want to call where we live, and you just think, oh, nobody's ever heard of this. It's not wildly popular. And then you're like, oh yeah, maybe things can be wildly popular all over the world, and people in our region just have no concept for it. So yeah, just amazing to see how this movie and this soundtrack have just become a cultural phenomenon over the last 30 years.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's dive into this thing track by track. Number one, Iggy Pop, Lust for Life. Dude, okay. Originally, this song came out in 1977. This was off the album Lust for Life, which was produced and co-written by David Bowie. And Bowie had actually declined being included on the Trainspotting soundtrack, though he does make a lot of appearances on it. He plays piano on this song, for example, in addition to producing this whole album. This is the perfect opening needle drop. I mean, a great way to kick off the soundtrack. We talked about this in our opening needle drops episode, but the energy that this brings to the film with the Choose Life voiceover, it's a perfect era-defining cinematic moment. Pop's collaboration with Bowie on The Idiot and Lust for Life, those two albums, helped resurrect Iggy Pop in the 70s. Iggy Pop had been a big deal and kind of a buzz band back in the day with the Stooges after that highly influential run, but he kind of was like falling by the wayside. The Stooges weren't really active. Iggy was kind of lost, and Obviously, Bowie kind of gave him, no pun intended, a shot in the arm. But when this thing was featured in Trainspotting, Pop achieved a whole other level of fame to a new generation, myself included. Within a few months of the soundtrack's release, Pop's manager said that he received more than 20 requests to use Iggy's music on soundtracks. The song, after the release of this soundtrack, it reached number 26 in the UK singles chart, and number 39 on the US radio and records alternative chart. Iggy Pop said, "When I made Lust for Life, I really thought America was going to rock to this motherfucker. And it took 20 fucking years, which is a really long time to wait. All of a sudden, a few years ago when Trainspotting came out, I was walking down the street and I heard Raw Power coming out on the bars." That's a Stooges album. So like clearly this brought Iggy Pop to a whole other level of fame and to a whole new generation of people. I don't know if I would have the frame of reference. I love Iggy Pop. I love those two albums in particular. Love the Stooges. I don't know if I would have had a frame of reference had it not been for this film. So very much grateful for that. But yeah, I mean, does it get any better of an opener than Lust for Life by Iggy Pop?
No, I mean, we have an episode where I think we rated this number one or very top to number one as best needle drops of all time on how you start a film. I mean, it's a perfect opening to a film. The song fits the scene perfectly. I love this song, how it starts with the drum beat. And I really think the drums is maybe the one. I mean, it's definitely one of the highest points of the song, if not my favorite part of the song. Um, the film opens with the main characters fleeing from police, and the song matches, the tension and the drama. I love when the piano comes in. The piano's great on here. The piano becomes, a percussion instrument like it is, but it definitely adds to that steady beat that just maintains its energy through the whole song. The guitar in Lust for Life is amazing. I love all the little fills and runs at the end of lines. The intro, you got this long intro that builds up before we get any vocals, and the lyrics are wild. I have to go back and read the lyrics to even know what he's saying. Sometimes I still, I'm reading the lyrics, I still don't know what he's talking about. I just kept saying in my notes over and over again, just love how they maintain the energy of this song start to finish. And yeah, just a great song. Remove it from the movie. I could say
Yeah.
that probably about every track on this album, but just remove it from the movie and you still have an amazing song.
Absolutely, man. And that whole gap where the very long intro before you get any words is perfect. It's like you get that whole choose life voiceover going on, sets the stage for the film, and then when the vocals kick in and Renton drops back on the floor, it's just a incredible moment. Okay, the next up, Brian Eno, Deep Blue Day. From Brian Eno and Daniel Lanois' 1983 album Apollo, Atmospheres and Soundtracks, which also featured Roger Eno. I love Lanois' incredible steel guitar. You know how I am about this. The epitome of steel guitar being used in this ethereal, atmospheric way. This was originally written for a documentary film about the Apollo program called For All Mankind. Boyle included another song from this album in 28 Days Later, and Danny Boyle told WNYC Studios, "That album is, to me, one of the greatest atmospheric albums ever. It is just an extraordinary piece of work. I've used it multiple times. I used it in a TV series before I moved into film, and I used it so many times in so many different ways that eventually Brian Eno wrote to me and said, I've done other things, So it's a funny use of this song during the infamous toilet diving scene, but it's a great introduction to Eno's ambient work. We had a spot during our high school days that we would visit that had a great view of the county that we lived in, and we would play this while we would hang out up there. And it was just like, I just have so many great memories with this song. I'm sure you do too.
Yeah, Rabbit Mountain. Most of my memories of us listening to the soundtrack, I look over and I see Ethan and Jay on the hood of a vehicle, just laying on the hood of a vehicle, staring at the stars with this
Uh,
album playing. I mean, it didn't get any better than that.
no.
Uh, I put in my notes. I remember when we'd sit around and listen to this, and after about 60 seconds, I think I would lose patience and be like, all right, it's the toilet scene. Let's move on to a song. But it's so that I think this song is perfect for the movie where it's like, okay, we're like going through straight trauma here in this bathroom. And it's like, I'm about ready to look away because it is like, it's getting gross. There's poop on his hand and
Yeah.
I'm about to
Oh
throw
yeah.
up. And then, and it's like gritty and real. We're all right. We've come through it. We know what we're getting into. We're heroin addicts. We're got to get clean. We just got to diarrhea anywhere we can find a spot to squat. And now, and then it flips and he starts climbing in the toilet. And then it's like, oh, okay. Now are we in fantasy world? And then he drops in and this song starts playing. It's like, oh, okay, thank God. Okay, we escaped reality and I can stop thinking about the poop on my hand and now everything's okay. So yeah, just a super cool song that, now you're gonna hear this theme over and over with me is when I was a teenager, I didn't have the patience to sit with all these songs. Now I do, and I'm gaining a respect and an affinity for all these tracks that, you know, as a teenager, 45 seconds in, I'm like, all right, I got it. Next track.
And the next track is Primal Scream with Trainspotting, the legendary Scottish band. Primal Scream composed this song for the movie. It plays during the scene in the park where Renton and Sick Boy shoot a pellet gun and talk about Sick Boy's theory on aging artists. This track has a couple of cool samples from EVA by Jean-Jacques Perry and Get Out of My Life, Woman by George Semper. Is very much a vibe song that I can throw in the background while doing almost anything. Primal Scream, Screamadelica is one of the best albums of the 90s. There aren't actually a ton of Scottish musicians on this album, so it's cool that they're included here. I feel like this is very much just all about the energy it creates. It's really good in the film, and even though it's very subtle, I like its inclusion on the soundtrack. I like where it sits, and just a cool thing to have on in the background.
I feel like I'd heard Primal Scream, like the band mentioned, but couldn't think of any other song I'd ever heard. But just like a lot of the other songs on here, I feel like I missed this 30 years ago and now, or 25 years ago. Now I'm kind of obsessed with it. Like you said,
Mm.
perfect background song. I remember thinking, okay, this song comes on, it's like, I remember this part of the movie. That's
Mm.
fun. And then thinking, let's just move on. But when I listen to this on its own, I think this is a super cool track. I like how the track builds and there's all these different elements. I love that theme. It's played on a guitar a little bit, then it's played on something that
Mm-hmm.
sounds kind of like a harmonica. But this is just a perfect song for a film or TV because it's like in the background and doesn't dominate what's going on the screen, but it's super cool. And in the background, you're like, oh, what is that? That's interesting. It kind of builds mystery or suspense. So, yeah, another great track, Trainspotting by Primal Scream.
Then we get to Sleeper with Atomic. This is a too often overlooked Britpop band, especially overlooked in the United States. Sleeper contributed this cover of Blondie's Atomic after Blondie supposedly refused to have their music included on the soundtrack, though they do make an appearance on the soundtrack to T2 Trainspotting, which we'll talk about briefly here as we wrap things up at the end of this show. Great song played during the scene where Renton falls for Diane at the nightclub. I didn't know Sleeper or I didn't know Blondie when I got the soundtrack. So this helped introduce me to two interesting bands. This is wicked, man. I love this song. I love the guitar riffs in it. I love the vocals. I think Sleeper did a great job of it. They're kind of like staying faithful to the original, but after learning that they couldn't get the rights from Blondie, it made sense. Also, I'm pretty sure it's because Blondie didn't allow it, but it also might have been a cost thing. If you can't get the original version because of the cost of it, it's often cheaper to get a cover version of it. So maybe that's part of it too. Either way, I love how this works in the soundtrack. And after I eventually found out it was a Blondie song, it allowed me kind of be open-minded about Blondie, and now they're one of my favorites. So yeah, how do you feel about this one? I don't know if we've ever talked about Atomic.
I feel like this song was one of those where it's like it seems so out there from another planet when I was a teenager, and I thought, okay, well, this is just like Europe in the time, but it's not really for me. And now I'm like you, I love this song. I'm like, I'm almost obsessed with it. Like, yes, give me more of this style.
Absolutely. Super cool too that like it does have a very European vibe, and it's so funny that an American band, that Blondie, New York band did this. Then we get into one of my favorites, man, New Order, Temptation. This is a version of Temptation. It's from 1987 re-recording of for the Substance compilation. The band had released two versions in 1982. If you go online and look for Temptation, you're probably going to come across the different versions of it. New Order is, of course, a classic in the post-punk new wave dance rock band from Manchester, where Danny Boyle is from too. At zero frame of reference for New Order when I heard this. It took time for this to click. Now it's one of my favorite songs from one of my favorite bands. I feel like New Order's inclusion in the soundtrack is really important. It helps bridge that gap. I mean, New Order were so far ahead of their time in bringing that electronic feel, and you don't hear it quite as much in Temptation, but by the time you get to Blue Monday and some of their mid to later stuff, they really did help bridge that gap from like that post-punk new wave thing into the dance scene. They went to New York, they found out about all that stuff, but this is that really interesting time for me in New Order where they're still kind of like there's still some Joy Division vibes going on after they were Joy Division and became New Order. I love this song. How do you feel about Temptation these days?
Oh, I love this song. I feel like this song hit with me from the start. And then for some reason, I wasn't smart enough to go seek out New Order. But I feel like this one hooked in me from the beginning, probably a little bit with its place in the movie and what's going on in the movie. But I just remember that the vocals being like, okay,
Yeah.
this is a hook, and this is stuck in my head, and I like this and I want more. So yeah, I feel like I was obsessed with this from the beginning. But just thinking about the song, I I think it's a banger. It stands the test of time. A great representation of what you said, that moving to post punk to dancey. Um, I love how the song builds and builds, and then you kind of get a climax, and then right back to a build up again, and just kind of bounces back and forth. And it's a song written in a style that I think we talk about a lot, a style that we like, where the the drums or the drum beat stays the same, and maybe the accompaniment stays the same, and they're playing the same thing throughout the entire song. And what changes in the song are the melody lines and the lyrics. The vocals determine, okay, this is going to be a chorus here, and this is going to be a verse here, and this will be a bridge part. And in the meantime, a lot of the instruments and the drum and the beat is just maintaining the same thing throughout, which I think makes for an interesting song, and makes for a song that you have constant build up, playing back and forth with a climax.
You can hear this faintly playing when Renton meets Diane's parents and they're eating breakfast. But then she sings this song to him when he's going through, or at least in his mind, she's singing this to him when he's going through withdrawals. Apparently, they wanted the character of Diane. They wanted Kelly MacDonald to sing golden years from David Bowie, but she didn't know it. So like she couldn't like retain it, I guess. So they were like, okay, you know New Order, you know Temptation, like, just sing that, and that became the thing, which is like it worked out perfectly. And it takes us to Iggy Pop's Nightclubbing. You texted me about this one. I know that this one is especially kind of ringing your bell right now. Is this one that is kind of on repeat for you?
Oh yeah, this one's in the playlist. This became an obsession for real, and we've been listening to it nonstop. You know, we did an episode recently about a top 40s countdown from 1996, and I was making fun of James Hetfield's vocals on Metallica's "Until It Sleeps." You know, with all his that he puts at the end of the end of his lines. Well, conversely, that's how super cool Iggy Pop's vocals are on this song. Man, Iggy Pop is cooler than Freddie Jackson sipping on a milkshake. You know what I mean? I mean, I love the vocals in this song. How the vocals are way up in the forefront, and you just hear like every gritty part of Iggy's voice. I just think that's so cool. But this song, okay, so you get that bass beat. Every time I put
Yeah.
on this song around the house, my kids get fired up because they think they're about ready to get "We Will Rock You." And then I have to be like, sorry kids, not today. We're listening to Iggy. And then then you get that, just like that dirty grungy organ coming in,
Mm.
and then the piano. I think we talked about it in Lust for Life. The piano serves as a really good percussion beat too that goes along with everything. Excuse me. And
Yeah.
then the piano, because all we've got so far is like beats and funky organs with distortion on it. The piano serves like the good melody for the
Mm.
accompaniment too. But man, this song is dirty and sounds from the seedy underworld and just cool, and it's got all the elements. I love it.
Dude, another Iggy Pop classic. This song is off of Iggy's first album, The Idiot. Also produced by David Bowie. Bowie plays many instruments and provides backing vocals on the song. Yeah, I mean, you said so much of it. I would love to have a video of people in the best household with dad being like, "We're listening to Nightclub and Iggy Pop, baby, let's go." I love that. That's such an amazing. That's such an amazing visual for me. This is such a twisted, gnarly song. Just fits perfectly into the character's relapse montage of where it's just kind of like there's sort of this nihilistic like, screw it, like we made this healthy, informed, democratic decision to get back at it, and they're just doing all this nefarious stuff. And it's like getting to the point where things are about to turn. Up to this point in the movie, it's kind of like there's not. I mean, look, going toilet diving for opium suppositories isn't like, that doesn't seem like a happy, fun time to do, but it does. But you do get the sense that like, oh, the stakes are kind of low. Everything's just kind of like, they're just kind of like sort of a slice of life of people who are addicts. And this is when it's starting to turn a little bit, and the music kind of introduces that. And then, man, then things get really to a whole other emotional level when we get to Blur's Sing, the first of two Damon Albarn appearances on the soundtrack. This is actually a very early Blur track off of their first album, Leisure.
My pleasure and other people's leisure.
Though there is a demo version that dates back to 1989 when the band was still called Seymour. It's a very simple but haunting track. We love this. We've when we get together, sometimes we've played this song. Just it's simple, but there's so much energy. Like every song on the soundtrack, this is used perfectly in the film as the characters go through a sort of nihilistic burn it all down phase. Albarn, in an interview with Select in 1995, said that Sing was the first time playing as a band that I thought we really had something. And you can tell it, like the fact that this is on Leisure is like, It doesn't sound anything like any of the other songs on Leisure, but it is definitely a sign that, like, okay, this band has another gear that maybe that they'll tap into later, which they do. Uh, Damon went on to say that even people who hated us, or actually Graham, I think, said it. Even people who hated us would come up, rushing up to us and say, "What was that song?" So yeah, this was like, I mean, this was definitely one I think that you kind of tap into, like, oh, we're more capable than we thought of. But the use in this film, like, it's just, I don't know. There was a time in my life when the heaviness, the weight of this song, it was like I couldn't listen to it unless I was in the right frame of mind. I'm not really there now. I just think it's great and I can throw it on. But there was like several years where it's like I had to be in the right headspace to listen to Sing. I don't know if you had that same experience.
I did. Yeah. Yeah, it was. It was almost like reverent, that was like preserved for something special, or like you said, just so heavy. It's like, ooh, I don't know if I need to tap into all the feels that are associated with this song. But this song, I mean, what can you say about it? It's a masterpiece. It blows my mind. It's brilliant. To think about how this song is played live with musicians gives me a brain cramp, because we've tried to do it several occasions, and it is just, I mean, the piano and drums are like a metronome that all the other instruments go by. And then you have, and it gives the other instruments freedom to just be the best versions of themselves. You get the awesome bass line that is just so recognizable, and get stuck in your head because it's such a great line. Um, here's another one of those songs where it's the piano and drums keep the same thing going throughout the whole song. And then there's this one, I guess, climax diversion from it. But it's just a constant back and forth of build up to climax. And like you said, just comes with this um I don't know, this just giant sound of euphoria or heaviness, just get you feeling all the feels, whatever the mood is around. But yeah, it's just, I mean, it's just it's one of those perfect songs where you're like, man, where does this come from? How does somebody write this? But this is amazing.
It's like one of the only songs of its kind. Like, if I were to think of, like, I want to sing playlist, it's like it would just be sing like 8 times. Like, there's no other song that really sounds like this.
Right.
And then we get into Lou Reed's Perfect Day from Lou Reed's classic 1972 album Transformer, also produced by David Bowie. Definitely a theme here, along with Mick Ronson, who co-produced that. Bowie also played keyboards on this song too. After the popularity of Trainspotting, the song was released as a BBC charity single in 1997, reaching #1 in the UK, Ireland, and Norway. Lou Reed rejected interpretations of the song being about heroin addiction, because that was always the speculation about this song. And Reed says, this guy's vision of a perfect day was the girl, sangria in the park, and then you go home. A perfect day, real simple. I meant just what I said. This is played right after that sing sequence. We talked about this in our favorite moments in film video that we did, which was kind of like another needle drop video, and just speaks to how many powerful needle drops there are in Trainspotting. But this is another one too, man. We talked about this in that video with the needle drops, but it's like the juxtaposition of so many different things. There's this brightness and this darkness in this song, like even divorced from the movie. Like, this song, there's so much going on in it, and it's haunting, and it's kind of funny, and it's sinister at the end. I love this one, man. I love Lou Reed's. I love that they included this Lou Reed song on Trainspotting soundtrack.
Are you ever riding around with your wife and you just get up in all your feels and you wanna let her know how much you love her and how much you've had just this has just been the best day, and then a song pops in your head and you're like, "Oh, yeah, let's play that one." So then you put on a song and you're halfway through Perfect Day by Lou Reed and you're like, "Oh, gosh, this is kinda getting dark and taking a different turn. Maybe, gosh, I hope my wife's picking up what I'm trying to lay down." And then you're thinking, gosh, did she get the point, or is she worried that I'm suffering from depression? But in all seriousness, this song is beautiful, and it's just weird enough. I think it's sinister is a good word, but I really think this is a beautiful song. I love it.
Absolutely.
And I love it all the way to its weird Old Testament twist at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just I think it's a perfect song, and just perfect for this movie, because this movie is just, dirty and
Yeah.
gritty, and it's beautiful at times, but it always just has this even at its perfect beauty, it's just got a little bit of filth and and grit to it.
As much as I love Lou Reed being like, look, man, it's straightforward. It is what it is. But it's like, okay, well, who's reaping what they sow if it's such a perfect day? Like there's some more going on there that I don't know if Lou's comping to or not, but I could just see that as like, okay, honey, this is a great representation of our day together. And it's like, you're going to reap just what you sow. It's a nice little take home message.
Is Lou one of those people? You ever met one of those people? It's like they just can't, you just can't take winning for winning. It's like they
Yeah.
scratched off a winning lottery ticket, and they're like, it's like Eeyore. It's like, yeah, but I'll probably have a flat tire on the way home. It's like, Lou, gosh, man, we just had some sangria and your girl's happy. Like, let's just call it a day. It's like, oh,
Nope.
I guess I'll probably burn for this later.
I totally get that vibe from Lou. I think that's a pretty spot on read, actually. Man, and then we get to like quite the happy, like as it contrasted with the heaviness of the previous two songs. We get to what I think is one of the most fun songs on this soundtrack. My introduction to Pulp. This is Pulp Mile End, and I'm pretty sure, even though like Common People was huge, again where we lived and the time that this was, I don't think Common People reached me until a little bit later. But Mile End was like, this is to still like to some extent, this is still one of my favorite Pulp songs. Jarvis Cocker said that we were making different class, amazing record. And we pretty much, we recorded pretty much all the songs. And then we got this message saying, there's a guy making a film. I would love to do a Jarvis Cocker impersonation, but I'm not going to ruin it. And could you write a song for it? So as luck would have it, we had a song called Mile End that we recorded, but didn't really fit on the album. And so we said, could you use that? And Boyle said that he, at one point, had lived in Mile End in London. So I think that is, I think it was kind of fitting for him on a personal level too. I love this. This is kind of it's also fits in really nicely. This is the sequence where Begbie has forced himself into Ritten's life in London after he's made he's starting to make a nice little life for himself. And then Begbie shows up after an armed robbery charge, and he's hiding out in his apartment and making him grab smokes and place bets on the horses. I love this. I think it's horses. He's placing bets on something. I don't know. It could have been a dog race. I'm not sure, but I love this sequence, and I love this song too. Pulp Mile End. Obviously, you know how I feel about Pulp. This is just like an all-timer band for me, and this still is just this is just like, you can't put this on and not kind of smile, right?
Oh gosh, yeah. High point of the album for me. Love this song. You loved this song when we were in high school and tried to get me to like it, and it was always like all right, I'll like it a little bit. Could you like it? And shame on me for not, giving Pulp more of a chance, because now I'm ready. Okay, I'm finally ready. I'm gonna need you to help me get into Pulp, okay? Because
I
I'm
got you.
ready. But yes, I love this song. Love the energy of this song. Love, this is a fun song where like the accompaniment and the vocals contrast a bit. One of our favorite bands, Radiohead, does this a lot, where the accompaniment on this is like, really straightforward. Everything's on the same downbeat and upbeat and happy, and then the vocals get to kind of play around and do some fun things. But yeah, this song gets stuck in my head. I liked it 25 years ago because I had to. Now I like it. I have a choice, and I'm loving it now. Yeah, is it Mile End?
Yep, Mile End.
Mile End by Pulp. I'm digging this song. It's in my playlist now.
Oh, I love to hear that. You made me very happy today. And then we get into a song that was one of the harder songs for me to get into initially. Even when I was open minded to a lot of this stuff back in '97 or wherever it was that we first discovered this album, the soundtrack, the movie. House took a little bit longer to kind of like pierce my aversion to more like dance friendly music, electronic music. But Bedrock featuring KYO, for what you dream of, the full on Renaissance remix. This was the debut single by English electronic music duo Bedrock, featuring singer Carol Leeman, and it's featured in a London rave scene where Renton and Begbie celebrate Begbie's bet on a race. It's hard to tell, like, from the what's going on, if this is actually a club that's doing that. At this time, electronic music was also kind of an underground renegade thing where you kind of had to know where the thing was to go find the actual party. So it's interesting to just kind of have that ambiguity, but to have that, like I said, the closest thing to a timestamp about when this came out. The song itself was originally released in 1993, and like so many others on the soundtrack, this was released in 1996, again after Trainspotting's success, and it was a commercial success, staying at number 1 on the UK dance chart for 2 weeks. Electronic music, which was so important to the youth culture in the UK from the late 80s, but especially once you make it into the 90s, For What You Dream Of is sort of a great ambassador for progressive house music at that time. So I've come to really appreciate this song and what it represents on the album and kind of what it's standing for, and then also just the song itself. I think it's good, but it was one of the more elusive ones to me for the longest time to get into. How do you feel about this one?
Oh, I like it. You know, from after Mile End, I feel like towards the end of the soundtrack, I'm not as familiar with. Uh, I do remember this from listening to it in high school. There's a couple coming up that I was like, when I went back and listened to it preparing for today, I had no friend. I said, I don't remember hearing this at all. This one I do remember, and I feel like I probably gave it a bit of a chance and then thought, I'm not really into that. But now I can go back and listen to it and like it a lot. I think it's very interesting, and my musical taste has changed since then. But now I really like this track.
Yeah, I mean, we're so much more open to electronic stuff and even house music and all of that. So it makes sense that we've kind of grown into this one. And then Alaska's 2-1. I loved this song. Alaska was one of the best Britpop bands. It's you often, and I fall into this trap too. You talk about Oasis and Blur and Pulp, but Alaska's right up there with those, along with Suede. And this is probably my favorite Elastica song, with its wicked chord progression and that nasty guitar riff. I love the way the vocals start to play off each other. There's sort of this counterpoint that goes on with the vocal lines as the song progresses. Great use of this in a sequence that ends with Begbie and Sick Boy lunging out at some unsuspecting potential home renters. Love its place in the movie. I love this song as well. Is this one of those that is kind of like under the radar for you?
Yes, but excuse me. I do remember it and thinking when this soundtrack came out, I was like, oh, Elastica, here's a band that I'm familiar with. So it
Mm.
was like, okay, this isn't going to be a stretch or a leap to have to sit through this one. So this was one that I gravitated toward immediately. I think Elastica's music, a lot of their music has stand the test of time. I like this track a lot.
It's funny how Elastica really, I mean, even before Wonderwall hit and Oasis kind of became a household name in the United States, like Alaska was actually one of the few Britpop bands that got airplay in the United States, like, way before some of those other bands that we know and love and talk about all the time became prominent. And then we get into, dude, one of my favorites, just bands. You could call this like a house band. I don't know how you would want to define this particular genre of house music or electronic music from this time. But you get Left Field with a final hit. Left Field is one of the more important electronic house bands in Britain during the 1990s. They were included on the soundtrack a few months after the release of their amazing album, Leftism. I love that album. Just absolutely love Left Field. Just as recently as 2022, they released a new album that featured Full Way Round with my dude, Grian Chatton from Fontaine's DC on the vocals. It was one of my favorite songs of 2022. A final hit is Played Not Surprisingly, for Renton's final hit of heroin in the movie. Group songs have also been featured in other Boyle movies, including Shallow Grave and The Beach. The final hit sits closer to, gosh, it's so hard to categorize house music, all the different splinter factions that came out, but I think this sits closer to progressive breaks and down-tempo electronic music with Left Field's signature dub techno hybridization. It shows the breadth of 90s electronic music beyond that straight 4/4 of house and techno. I love this. I also love I just love Left Field in general and what they contribute to Danny Boyle's movies. And there's even more of them on the version volume 2 of Trainspotting, but I love this one. This is just a cool little gnarly track. This one really evokes the movie too. I think this was one, and listening to the director's commentary, where they were saying that this was actually written for the film, as it had been edited. So, which was a little different from how a lot of the other songs were included in the movie. What do you think about a final hit from Left Field?
I'm obsessed with this song.
Yes.
This song is awesome. It's everything that I like about electronic music. You know, they use all the ingredients that I like personally, and I just can't get enough of this song. I did not have much of a frame of reference for Left Field 25 years ago, but I'm ready to check out more because this song has got me excited.
Dude, you're in for a fun world of exploration with Left Field. I guarantee it. Then we get into, man, here we go. Underworld, Born Slippy Nux. Where do you even start with this and the phenomenon that it became? This thing's an anthem, baby. This plays in the final scene as Renton makes off with the money. Born Slippy is emblematic more of progressive techno house. It's hypnotic, long form, and emotionally charged without being built around a traditional vocal or any sort of drop. The vocals to this song were recorded in one take. Underworld, in particular, Carl Hyde, who provided the vocals, was reckoning with a bit of a drinking problem, and he kind of feared that all those chants of lager would imply a celebration of drinking when he was really actually struggling with alcohol. So the group was reluctant to let it be included in the film, knowing the subject matter of the film, but then they agreed after Boyle showed them some of the movie, and they were convinced, and they said, just do whatever you want with our music. While making Trainspotting, Boyle used Underworld's album Dub No Bass with My Head Man as a rhythmic guide, especially in the editing process. So even though a lot of that music is not featured in the movie, it did inform a lot of it. He randomly found this 12-inch remix in an HMV store, which is a record store, and instantly knew he needed to end the film with it. Trainspotting, he later said, was ostensibly about heroin, but was rhythmically more like ecstasy, which just makes so much sense when you watch the movie. And Born Slippy provided that perfect crescendo. The song, like so many others, didn't originally perform all that well, but it was released as a single after Trainspotting, went to number 2 on the UK singles chart. Melody Maker named Born Slippy Nux the single of the year in 1996. Billboard, Rolling Stone, Pitchfork, Guardian, LA Weekly have all included it in best of lists. This was certified platinum in the UK. Underworld's Rick Smith, who later did the score for another Danny Boyle film called Trance, I don't know if you've seen that one, he told Vice that the weirdest experience he had was, he said, when it came on the breakfast radio show on BBC Radio 1, I couldn't believe it. It just seems so out of context. This song on breakfast radio, it was such a shock. When did the world change that this belongs here? Mad. It didn't make sense, and not in an unpleasant way. I thought music is moving, culture is moving, it's spreading, it's meaning things outside of just the context of an amazing sound system in a club or a PA system in a student hall. It was very nice. It's been a remarkable piece of music for us. It feels like it almost came from somewhere else. dude, this song, I can't listen to it without feeling that rush, that euphoria, the opening 2 chords steeped in that delay. And when the back end of this thing kicks in with that like 4 on the floor kick drum, I just struggle to think of a more powerful moment in music and film. They also, another great one that's used in the volume 2, Underworld also contributed Dark and Long, which is used in the second volume, but it's where he's going through withdrawals in his bedroom. Just so sold on this, so into this. I have been for 30 years. They remixed this song, Born Slippy, into a great time stretched version called Slow Slippy, which is very good, very different vibe. And that was used for the T2 Trainspotting movie that came out in 2017. So definitely check that out. But yeah, gone on and on. Do you get amped when you hear Born Slippy too? Because I'm ready to go right now talking about it.
Yeah. Like I said, I didn't have an affinity for electronic music in the mid to late 90s, but I do now, and I can't get enough of this track. I'm loving it. I had no idea the success of this track until you just dropped that on me right now. No idea that that's what this track became, but yeah, I can see why. It is amazing.
When this comes on out in the wild, I remember one time I was at this bar in East Nashville. I think that bar's still there. I'm not sure, but some clever person put this on, and I was like, I was around a bunch of people, and I was like, dude, it's Board Slippy Nux. It's Board Slippy, and people were like, what? Are you okay? Are you all right? Are you gonna be all right? And I just flip out when I hear it out in the world. I love this one. It makes me so happy. And then we close things out with Damon Albarn, Closet Romantic, a great closer over the closing credits. Cool that Damon has this spot here. It reminds me a lot of Blur's quirkier tracks from like Park Life and The Great Escape. So Danny Boyle actually said at the time, although we weren't as aware of it as you're aware of now, Britpop was happening. It's been emulsified as an occasion in retrospect, but at the time it didn't feel like it. I remember Jarvis Cocker and Damon Albarn coming in to watch a rough cut of the film. Damon wasn't sure about it. He was worried about the drug side of it, but Jarvis said to him, "Oh no, it's like really cool, man," and sent us a few songs. And Danny Boyle says that Damon was great. He gave us this song, and I remember him saying, "I haven't got a title for it." And I said, "Oh, there's this amazing phrase in Irving Welsh's book where he calls heroin users closet romantics. They're romantic people the drug affects most terribly, and they're often, in Irving's experience, certainly as it's expressed through the book, those that can't even acknowledge they are romantic. And it kind of seals their fate really for their life." And so he called it Closet Romantic. And there you have it. It's a weird one. I love the reading of the different James Bond film titles in it. It's fitting to Sick Boy's obsession with Sean Connery and all things James Bond. Just a nice little outro to the album. It's cool over the closing credits in the movie too. But then, Damon's our dude. So it's just nice that he has that spot of having this solo song on here.
Yeah, I don't even remember this being on the soundtrack at all. But yeah, I totally agree. Anything Damon Albarn is, I'm ready for, and give it to me, and I can't get enough. And fun that this is the way it closes.
And then, that's it for the actual original soundtrack. Of course, there was a Trainspotting #2 motion picture from music from the motion picture Volume 2, which had The Passenger from Iggy Pop. It had Underworld's Dark and Long, had Habanera from Carmen from Bizet. It had, Bowie was on that one with Golden Years. Another left field final hit. That Temptation song, Heaven 17, that's on Volume 2. Nightclubbing, there's a remix version of it. So Nightclubbing's on this, and then there's a remix of Joy Division makes the Volume 2 cut too. So it's just like it's weird, and I've heard it a few times. When you go look this up, like on your streaming service, you're not going to find the Trainspotting soundtrack. You usually find playlists that people make of it, which will be hodgepodge because, it's not like you can go look up Closet Romantic on Tidal or Spotify or Apple Music or whatever you're using. At least I don't think. But they will include things from like Volume 2. So yeah, so like that's where Heaven 17 comes in, and all of those, but they're very prominent in the movie. And then some of the songs on that sound on the volume 2 aren't in the movie at all, but they were things that the filmmakers were listening to while making the movie, or that somehow influenced it, or maybe they were influential for Irving Welsh. So yeah, that's like a whole. I mean, this thing, it came out more than a year later, and you can tell it's just like, all right, this one's done so well. What else can we do? Let's get a volume 2 going.
Exactly. Yeah, I kept waiting for Temptation by Heaven 17. I on the playlist that I had on my streaming service, it said it was on the soundtrack. So that's why I'd prepared that. But yeah, that's cool. That I really like that song, and so there's some of those that weren't on my playlist. I'm gonna have to go check those out.
It's cool. It's a cool secondary one. I mean, it's it doesn't quite have the punch that the first one has, but also has a Primal Scream song on there. Anyway, the thing I really did want to touch on, because I'm just so obsessed with this film and everything, is T2 Trainspotting, which this came out in 2017. Dude, I know so many people that love Trainspotting that didn't even know that there was a sequel that came out. Whereas the first one had this massive cultural impact and was talked about endlessly. The sequel, I felt like, really flew under the radar. I mean, I went to the theater to see it. I couldn't wait. I was there opening day, and it's not like it was packed full of people. It was pretty modest crowd. But I watched it again, even preparing for this. I've seen it several times. It's a really good movie. I mean, the first one has this sort of like, jolt of life that is just like you can't get away from, and you can always go back to it. But by the time you get to T2 Trainspotting, it's set like 20 years later. Obviously the actors are they're 20 years older, but the characters are too. They're dealing with the fallout of all their actions. It's sort of a meditation. It's always a little pretentious when people describe films that way, but it's like a meditation on aging and like middle-aged men kind of reconciling, and this feel for nostalgia, this kind of like, is it nostalgia that we're after here? Or are we memorializing something that was important to us? Is there a difference between those things? And what do we do with those feelings as we get older? How do we move forward in life knowing the things we've done, the choices we've made? How do we reconcile all of that stuff? I mean, I think it's a really beautiful movie. Honestly, I think it stands up with the original. It doesn't have that impact that the first one does, but I think it's amazing. I think Danny Boyle at that point was a much more, I mean, he's been doing it for a lot longer. He's a much more sophisticated filmmaker. The actors do a great job. Begbie's great in it. Spud's great in it. Everyone is really good in it. It has appearances from, like, Kelly MacDonald makes an appearance, Irvin Welsh makes an appearance. The soundtrack too is really good. It's crazy. All the music that is included on that T2 soundtrack. The Blondie's on there, Run DMC's on there, The Clash is on there. Like, they still pull from those, but the current thing in that movie, Danny Boyle does a great job of bringing in newer artists, and that's where I met Young Fathers, was on T2 Trainspotting. They provide, I think it's several songs on to the soundtrack itself and in the film. At least one of which was written for the film, and then other ones are just kind of pulled from earlier Young Father's work. Wolf Alice, who's currently putting out incredible music, I got introduced to them through the T2 Trainspotting. So it also has this like impressive breadth of artists across many different genres and eras of music. I obviously, like, you can't start comparing the two. It does a disservice to the sequel, I think, especially because it's just so different and it's not meant to be the same thing. But it's one of the few sequels that I think justifies its own existence in the film itself. And then I also just have this massive soft spot for the soundtrack itself. So if you revisit Trainspotting, make sure to do yourself a favor, and then, if you need to give it some time for the cobwebs to clear or whatever, then watch T2 Trainspotting. I think for people that are like, who were aware of that movie when it came out, who were young and enjoyed that movie kind of in real time, watching T2 Trainspotting, you're going to see a lot of reflection of yourself in it. It's really awesome, and I would highly recommend it. So that's my recommendation to you and to anyone out there is check out T2 Trainspotting. It's actually like really, really low key amazing, and one of my favorite movies of that year.
I'm definitely checking that out. You've got me sold.
So, man, that's we've covered a lot of ground there. We've talked about the soundtrack. We've talked about Volume 2 briefly. We've talked about T2 Trainspotting briefly. But, man, this is just such a blast. I want to know, though, overall takeaways from this film, from this soundtrack. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'll just share with you what I prepared. If somebody asked me what I thought of the Trainspotting soundtrack, I would say it's a collection of songs that represent lots of musical genres. You've got rock and roll and punk from the 70s and 80s. You've got electronica, rap, Euro dance, chamber choir, club music, classical and pop music from multiple decades, all represented in a motion picture soundtrack for the cult classic masterpiece Trainspotting, directed by a genius, Danny Boyle. Trainspotting, based on a novel by Irvin Welsh of the same title that gained cult popularity and also widely considered a masterpiece. The collection of music on Trainspotting soundtrack takes you on a journey that, even when separated from the film, enjoyed on its own, is sometimes unbelievable and always fascinating. Although a lot of these tracks are not songs that I would seek out on my own or might not even stumble upon because they're removed from the styles that I prefer, I legitimately really enjoy every song on this album. I easily recognize the greatness and appeal from each track. It's a collection of very well done music and great musical choices by the director to create a mood and vibe for his film. And despite all the different genres, each track maintains a dark, edgy vibe of an underworld, which coincidentally is one of the names of the bands on the soundtrack. Despite all the songs having stylistic differences, every track, in my opinion, maintains a common underbelly type theme. Just such a fun film and an equally fun soundtrack.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. This thing's legendary. I revisit it all the time. I don't know. We could go on and on. This thing could last 4 hours and I could just geek out, talk about every scene in the movie, every character in the film. I'm crazy about this thing. And I don't know. I'm sure you and I will find other reasons to shoehorn conversations about Trainspotting into episodes of the show.
Maybe a side episode would be you geeking about every scene and me doing my impressions of each character, which I would love to do and would be willing to bet that few would enjoy to watch.
Oh, I'm there for it. I'm ready to go. I'd pay money to see that right alongside the director's commentary. Man, this is so much fun. I know that we'll be doing more deep dives coming up soon. This one is a rare treat for me. Appreciate you going on the journey. I know it is for you too. And yeah, if you enjoyed this and you've watched this much, if you're this far into the video, just give us a like, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us if you're listening in podcast world. Then check that out. Check it. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll keep the deep dives coming. Man, choose life, choose a job, choose a career. This has been a blast, and we'll talk to you again soon.
In a word, pleasure. Like other people's leisure is my pleasure.
Well, is that Josh? Is that Josh or is that Spud Murphy?